Hello again, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Misa Tamura, the chair of ICON Ethnography Committee. Today, we have a very special talk by Lily called Chilkat Weaving and Material Sovereignty of Alaska's Northwest Coast. What I do now is I'm going to go through quick digital housekeeping like usual and introduce Lily. And I will then I will turn my video off so that Lily can have the full stage. Okay, let's go. This webinar is very kindly supported by Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, Goldbelt and Goldbelt Heritage. And this webinar is jointly hosted by Pitt Rivers Museum, University of Oxford, and the Institute of Conservation. Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing and start introducing Lily. Oh, sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical issues here. There you go. So, introduction. Our fantastic lecturer today is Lily Hope. She is a weaver from Chilkat, Raven, Duckdane Town Clan. Lily is a distinguished artist and community leader born and raised on Chilkat Army. She is a Chilkat weaver in the teaching lineage of Jenny Clonard and Clarissa Rizal. Pre-shutdown, Lily taught weaving internationally. She now teaches on Patreon, holding weekly space for weavers across the nation to continue studying Raven style and Chilkat techniques. Her finger-twined, adapted Formline, ceremonial Chilkat dancing blankets take years to complete. They document the inheritance, weavings recording history like a book, woven in yarn, a lineage of weavers, our current crisis and political issues. She's also a paper collage artist, bead-worker, and indigenous fashion designer. Lily is an enthusiast and advocate for artists and the arts. Her conversations, collaborations, and ideas contribute lasting support and a rich artistic community for artists in Alaska and beyond. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. Over to you, Lily.
Thank you so much, Misa, and thanks to Jeremy. I'm going to jump right into sharing my screen so that after all this, we'll not be sharing screens anymore. So thanks to all of you for being with us. It's my pleasure to share with you today. Let me know, is this big screen, yeah? Hopefully it is. I'm seeing it as a big screen. If you're not, give me a thing in the chat and say, no, I can't do that. Actually, I can't even see the chat. So Misa, can you see this as big screen?
Yes, I can see you as a big screen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Here we go. Ushkindain da'at yakhat duasak, yes nachatsiti, dakdain tan ayachat. My Chilkat name is Ushkindain da'at. I am Lily Hope. I'm Raven Duckdane Tan from the Snail House out of Hoonah, Alaska. As Misa said, I'm a Chilkat and Raven's Tail weaver, teacher, artist. I'm here in Juneau, Alaska, and you're sitting in my studio with me. So thanks for joining me. I'm here because of my mother and my teacher, Clarissa Rizal. Want to say thank you also to Jeremy at Pitt Rivers and Misa at the Institute of Conservation, and Desiree at Goldbelt, Ruben and Laura at Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, and the lineage of Chilkat ceremonial blanket makers and weavers who led to the sharing of this knowledge right now. My daily work is that of weaving Chilkat ceremonial robes. I might also refer to them as blankets. So if you say, hear me say either or, I do switch between the two. They're both valid. There are maybe 7 of us who weave every day these ceremonial blankets, who've woven a robe all the way through and have the time and are still breathing to weave another. We weave them for weddings and memorials, naming ceremonies, and celebrations. Chilkat robes have always been some of the most valued ut'u, that's our sacred clan property. We document our history, we weave in our clan crests, our dreams, our stories, similar to totem poles this way, that if you know how to read a totem pole, you could read this blanket, but we're weaving historical documents. My other work is pushing the definition of what is traditional Native art, utilizing century-old techniques to continue recording history as we are living it. We Tlingit are attuned to care for our community. These masks are telling that our future ancestors, hey, future ancestors, we were here, we took care of each other, and we survived. I'm fortunate also to work on old robes, always grateful to learn from these old ones, the masters, the original masters. And I always aim to use what is present in the blanket as much as possible, rather than adding new pieces, new strands. My latest robe brings the past and present together, using acid dyes in the black and yellow, black primary lines here in this diving whale, and the natural dyes, or the ethnographic record as we know them from the old ones, the natural dyes being that light turquoise and pale yellow, and the hemlock brown that's in this image. But really staying true to the Chilkat form, yet collaging these two beings together in the same plane. No other robe, as far as I know, has been woven like this, where there are this double beingness in one space. This is the overlay of the pattern for the robe that's in process, and you'll get to see that up close in a bit behind me. But my happiest place is weaving with students, whether in person or virtually. I hold space every single Sunday for over 30 students as we are constructing 32-inch wide, like half-size Chilkat dancing blankets. And as each student finishes, we're going to more than triple the number of artists who could weave adult-sized Chilkat robes. This growing community, paralleled with the climate change and hunting restrictions and easy global material access, is what we're here to talk about today, right? I hope that's why you're here. So we are all about looking at how we are protecting the material sovereignty of our indigenous homelands here in Alaska's Northwest coast. The weaving, I'm going to stop sharing and just keep talking. The weaving community here in Alaska is on the verge of finding out what it means to return to traditional materials use, to constructing our Chilkat blankets in yellow cedar and mountain goat, rather than the merino wool that we've used for the last 35 years. We've always had the materials and foods that we need to sustain our lives, and we've always been willing to trade for items that are not in our backyards. We harvest and gather materials sustainably, we hunt respectfully, we give gratitude to the plants and animals who support us, and we do all of this as a community. Each ceremonial robe requires the acquisition and processing of 5 to 7 mountain goat hides. And this is some of the fluff from that. And up to 2 pounds of cedar, depending on how thinly we split it. So let me show you what the cedar bark looks like. Feels kind of crazy. But we're supposed to pull this off the tree, cook it down, split it into teeny tiny pieces. Oh, look, here's a smaller piece. That's a nice one to cook down. And then spin it into our wool, right? So what is that? 5 to 7 hides, up to 2 pounds of cedar, and then we're cooking it, splitting it down. It took the late, great Ravenstail weaver, Terry Rothkar, also Dukdainton clan, to amass, it took her 17 years to amass the mountain goat hides and fur that she needed to make a single raven's tail robe entirely of mountain goat. It has taken my weaving colleague and I, Ricky Tagaban, it's taken us 7 years to get to the point of having maybe 1.5 total, like enough wool mountain goat to make a single, maybe is one and a baby size Chilkat blanket. Additionally, our yellow cedar trees here near Juneau, where I live, are freezing to death due to climate change, due to the lack of undergrowth that would usually insulate the roots and keep it from freezing, right? So if I want to harvest yellow cedar, I have to travel by air or by sea 400 plus miles to go gather the bark into another community. Want to pivot and watch me work a little bit? Let's do that. I'm going to bring you over here. But since the early 1900s, we've sourced the yarns that we need for making ceremonial regalia as far away as New Zealand and Australia and South Africa, really because we can, right? We don't have to paddle 1,000 miles to go trade for them. We don't have to barter with anyone. We can order them online, click, and poof, they arrive at our door. This has made the construction of dancing blankets much less labor intensive, which is kind of funny because these are 2,000 plus hours in the making, just in the twining of them, right? But with this global access, we have made it possible to weave more historical documents than before, because we're not spending that extra 1,000 hours, gathering, cooking, splitting, plying, spinning our materials together. But what does this mean? What does it mean to take the easy route to get this globally accessed material? Have you ever worn or felt the difference between a merino wool Chilkat dancing blanket and one made completely of mountain goat wool? I have. I did. Terry Rothkar's DNA robe. Raven's tail robe, it's so epic. It's made completely of mountain goat, of course, 17 years, right? Collecting. The way that this robe, I put this on my shoulders, and the way that it grabbed my shoulders, it was as if it was impelling me to move and dance. I mean, it was a total physical response to that feeling of the animal world calling for connection and celebration. It was a call for unity, for community. Since that day, I've put out the energetic beacon to let people know they can bring me handfuls of mountain goat. It doesn't have to be pretty, look. It can look like this, yeah? This is exactly what we are discovering. Contemporary weavers, like we all thought we needed full mountain goat hides. We thought we needed to make friends with all the local hunters and send up someone, an extra person with each mountain goat hunt so that they could carry down the hide. Because it's hard enough to carry down all the meat from a goat, but then who's gonna carry down a rain-soaked mountain goat hide? Gotta send a new person, right? Oh my gosh, we thought we needed to negotiate with the state of Alaska, with the Department of Fish and Game and say, hey, you're telling us we can't hunt our goats when they're the fluffiest, right? We thought maybe we need to get them in April or May. But then we got to interview this guy. He is, I wanna call him a mountain goat enthusiast. He's been studying goats for 1.5 years, going up into their habitat with his beautiful camera and filming them in their places. And he has names for them. He knows how many of them there are and how often they birth little kids, right? It's not often, and it's years before those ones can grow up and become dads themselves. So that's a thing. And you throw together that it's also like a 50 to 70% success rate for when you go up the mountainside to hunt a goat, right? So we have to take multiple trips up this precarious terrain to get a single mountain goat hide. And then our guy, I'll name him, his name's Richard Karstensen, if you get to meet him ever, he is a treasure trove of everything mountain goat. He's telling us that our permitted window to harvest these goats, or hunt them, I should say, is actually the perfect window to get the maximum hair off of a single hide, right? Because they're bulking up for the winter through September, October, and in late October, if we can get a mountain goat during that time, they've got the highest volume of hair they're gonna have, even if we waited until April and wanted to get them then. The risk to hunting a goat in April is that we can't tell from, 900 yards away, 300 yards away, we can't tell if that particular goat is carrying a baby. And we don't want to kill two goats in one, right? Because that's like killing the golden egg, right? The golden goose. So it's pivoting us back towards searching the ethnographic records and then listening to my mother's teacher, Jenny Clinat. Have you heard her speak Tlingit? She talks about this one path, or there's that trail where she would go and pull the hair off the bushes. We've been pulling it off bushes for how long? And people are bringing us little bundles at a time. How many people, how many hands had to be involved in this? It's blowing our minds. We think about ceremonial regalia as being woven by a single or maybe two weavers at most. But the gathering of the materials has always been in community. A single person could not gather enough wool on her own to make a robe, right? But can you imagine, we're up there gathering Hudson Bay tea, we're up there picking blueberries, and we find another bundle of mountain goat and we just stuff it in our pocket, put it in our backpack. And then we're finding it, just pulling it off of the bushes and bringing it down in small handfuls and contributing to this bigger work. And in this way, it's many hands and so many hearts that went into these masterful ancestral works. We can do this again. We're already doing it. We're gathering together. We're feeling the community enthusiasm. I have somebody come in probably 3 times a week. They're like, well, I just got off of Perseverance Trail. I saw that you opened your studio. Here you go. I got this for you. And they, like a little Ziploc baggie or, a grocery bag with some sticks and burrs and all the things in it. It's amazing. We're figuring out how to bring that community back, that unity back, how to give the natural world from our backyards a place to dance and celebrate with us again. Yeah. Come follow me to the loom and I'll keep sharing with you. I'm going to put my little camera just a little bit because I think you've looked at my face enough. And what an opportunity to see a blanket in process. So let's see if I can get you close enough without too much reflection. Pardon me as I remove this. You can see that I'm working on this pattern. Just a little interruption, but here's a little here, and I'm going to push this up over so it's not reflecting in the light. Pick this guy up. I swear I know where I am. I swear. Okay, let's see if we can keep doing this. All right, turning my chair. Pardon me. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna sit here at the loom with you and keep talking. Okay. Here we go. Can you see my hands working? Okay. So what do we do about the remedy? How do we remedy this loss of our cedar? We're not going to fly bales of hay up the mountainside and insulate the roots of these trees. We're going to let nature take its course, as we always have. We've always adapted to the new thing, the new colonizers, the new buttons coming over. We're going to let those trees go because that is what nature is doing. We're surrendering to that work. We're not forcing ourselves upon nature's work. The remedy is to turn toward sustainable harvest as we can do it within the world where we are now. We turn to deep ecology, to utilizing all the parts of the trees as we humans fell them. We have connections now to partner with a timber company who doesn't have use for their cedar bark. They're taking it off and just leaving it there in the woods. So we're sending, cross our fingers, we're sending up to 12 weavers to Prince of Wales Island to strip the bark for future use for not just Chilkat weavers, but for cedar bark weavers. Again, our communities working together. will we continue to weave with globally sourced materials, world access materials? Sure, it's easy, it's fast, it's really fun. We can get purple and orange and all the pretty colors and bright reds. We don't have to hand dye them. They allow us to cut our work time in half, right? They're allowing us to make gorgeous historical documents that tell the story of this time, right? And for those of us who are reaching back, carrying this ancestral knowledge with us, for those who are accepting the bundles of goat hair and pulling the bark off of these timber felled trees, we're participating in the original and rewritten sovereignty of our indigenous homelands. We are remembering and rebuilding community. We're inviting all the hearts and hands of our community. We're inviting our whole community. We're inviting our ancestors to dance again in celebration with us. And that's the end of my talk. And if you want to continue watching me weave, you can, but I'd love to answer all of your questions. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Lily. I did promise at the beginning that I'm not going to be a fangirl, but I am total fangirl. It was amazing. Thank you so much for so generously sharing. We are both touched and honored to see you weave, see you interact with material and your stories. It was wonderful. Thank you very much. But I'm going to have to, as a host, to contain my fangirl now and introduce Jeremy. So this is so the Q&A which we are coming into is hosted by Jeremy Yuden, who is the head of conservation at the Pitt Rivers Museum, University of Oxford. So over to you, Jen and Lily.
Hello, everyone. And again, I'd like to thank Lily for her amazing talk. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who was getting a little bit emotional, especially when you were talking about how community was being rebuilt. I'm sure lots of people do have questions. Please write them in the Q&A box down below. Yeah, as I say, it was just really fascinating to hear about how actually collecting materials itself is rebuilding community, but also what you were saying about how you'll still carry on using modern materials, and that availability of modern materials in itself is giving more people the opportunity to actually produce these living documents for future generations, and that kind of balance is really interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, the curious part about all this is that if there really are to be another 30 Chilkat blanket makers in the coming year, essentially, like by next January, how can all of us be working in mountain goat? We can't be. We can't actually do it. I mean, there aren't enough goats. There aren't enough people up in the hillsides pulling off little fluffs of hair. So we have to. That's the only way forward, is to continue using both. Yeah, which is the story of this blanket, really, is that we have the acid dyed yarns here, and the black and bright yellow. This is Clarissa's and Jenny's yellow, so commercially dyed. And then this light brownish color, and this here, and a pale yellow that hasn't come in yet, but it's on the pattern board right here to be a pale wolf moss yellow. Those are the old style, like recorded in ethnographic records, that these were the dyes that we used 200 years ago. So this is like merging that present and future, right? We've got these contemporary weavers dyeing acid, and then we've got the old dyes happening. And then we're bringing this robe into like contemporary work with this collaged being of one of the oldest and most woven diving whale primary Formline patterns, right? So if you could trace the entire pattern, you would be in all of the black lines, you'd be tracing that old design, the diving whale. And then that juxtaposition of old dies, but this new being kind of pushing through the veil of the Chilkat blanket, that there's a full face and hands pushing against the veil, almost like looking at the viewer. Maybe she's an ancestor, maybe she's a teacher, but yeah, using the new yarns in the old pattern and the old yarns in the newish pattern, and that like the interwovenness of it all.
I just had a question about the weavers who are acid dyeing yarn. Are they trying to match the traditional colors, or are they dyeing new colors for the modern weaving?
I think myself and most of the weavers that I've taught, I'm encouraging them to stick to the colors that I was taught to dye with, right? I always asked my mother, like, why this bright yellow? And she said, well, I asked Jenny the same thing. She said, why this saturation of yellow? Why can't we use that buttery yellow, you know, like the pale yellow of the old robes, like more like this little button yellow, right? Why aren't we using it? And Jenny's answer was, in 500 years, this yellow is still going to be yellow. And in 500 years, this teeny tiny little pale yellow might be white. So how much do you want it to fade? So to answer that, I've been training or supporting students in learning how to dye with these bright saturations. And then because these do fade, the natural colors are going to fade more quickly, might be 200 years before they're really pale, and will be long dead, you know, before that happens. But it's really about that longevity of these beings will exist many centuries beyond us. I also encourage my students not to attempt weaving a Chilkat ceremonial blanket using purples and oranges, that we can weave smaller contemporary works that way, which we have. Especially those Chilkat protector masks. There have been more than 45 people who've woven one with me, students of mine, and we've woven rainbow ones and transgender pride ones and orange ones and MMIW red masks, which is a taboo in itself on Chilkat. But yeah, so we don't know, we haven't asked the spirit beings that exist. We don't know why our colors were the black and blue and yellow and white. We don't know why that is, but most of us are sticking to these colors because there had to have been a reason. And if I were to view a Chilkat ceremonial blanket with the, you know, adapted curvilinear formline shapes, and it was woven in purple, I would want to know why. I would grill that artist and say, what is it that impelled you to make this huge ceremonial blanket with this particular color? And maybe they'll have a really good answer. Maybe they'll, you know, but justify it. Like, if you're going to break it, tell us why. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting, thank you. I have a question from Katrina Dring. She says, a wonderful talk and such a privilege to see you weaving, thank you. Given that it takes so long to gather traditional materials, how do you go about deciding on a design that's worthy of the work?
Ooh, good question. Every design that I've woven so far, and this is only 3 of the largest ones, has been inspired by or like a merging or melding of older patterns. So I haven't attempted to completely go off and design my own yet, but I feel like the old ones knew what they were doing. Our ancestors knew what was up and how to share these stories in this adapted finger-twined way. So any of those would be worthy of our hand-dyed yarns and our labor, all of the intense labor, thousands and thousands of hours, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. A terrific talk. Along with returning to traditional weaving techniques, are there artists from other cultural groups, European or indigenous, that Lily Hope has met who are studying the Chilkat weaving style or adopting elements in their weaving?
Great question. There are artists from other cultural groups who are studying this style with me, actually, and a few of them are bringing in some elements from their Celtic roots that might be woven in the next 10 months. We're looking at how to adapt that. And that's my encouragement as well, that if someone comes to me and says, I'm fascinated by this crazy laborious finger twining weaving that you're doing, and you're documenting the clan histories of your people, I'm not of your place. How do I participate? And my answer is bring your lineage to the work and weave your clan story. I know that you have them, and we all have them, even if we want to say, oh, I have no culture. You can trace your roots back and you know where you originate. Might be quite the research project, but I encourage you to come to the work bringing your story and weaving your crest, your history. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just about copying your style, it's about, you know, interpreting it in their own way.
That is exactly it, Jeremy, that someone coming to this work from outside of the Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian, or Canadian Kwakwaka'wakw or Nisga'a cultures, like realistically, you can't weave a Chilkat blanket. I mean, you could, but it's, I mean, I don't want to encourage you to weave a Chilkat dancing blanket. I want to encourage you to weave a textile using Chilkat techniques that records your lineage, right? So, and if you are so thrilled to weave a Chilkat blanket, come sit by us. Come find an indigenous weaver, sit next to us, and experience what this is like, because you are like convening with the universal consciousness. You're participating in some organized chaos that I don't even have words for. It's powerful and a little spooky, and kind of makes you process all of your fears. You're gonna go through so much doubt. You want to know what you're made of? Come try finger twining this. Well, but we're all a little bit loopy. I'm gonna have a little something's different in our brains to come to this and say, I'm gonna do that again. Yeah, that was great. It's kind of like having a baby. You forget the chaos while you're in the midst of it, but then when you witness one of your textiles dancing for the first time and taking their first steps, it's very, very similar to holding your baby for the first time or watching them take their first steps.
Yeah, I know you said during a lecture, but remind us how long it actually takes to weave a blanket of this size.
Yeah, it's easily 2,000 hours. So imagine 50 weeks a year at 40 hours a week, or 2 years at half that time, so that you can still take care of your family and do all the other things and teach classes and present for museums and institutions. It's great. Yeah. This one has been on the loom for coming up on 2 years, and it has to be finished by the middle of June. So, you know, no sleep for the next 9 weeks. Right.
How far through it are you, do you think? How
really close to halfway. Like this is pretty much halfway. Like we've got another 1.5 inches or so, or maybe probably 80 hours of like work here. Just because there's so many moving parts with all of these different changing colors. I don't know if you can see it, but it goes white, black, hemlock, black, white, black, just in this space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 colors in a 6-inch space. Yeah. Oh, and of course the weaving is the same color on the back, right? So wherever that color is traveling back and forth, it's doing that in its little isolated space, and then hooking elbows similar to Navajo weaving, and then traveling in its space. And so it travels in its own respective area, but connecting all the colors. It's a lot.
I have a question from Deborah O'Gara. Living documents is a great way to describe the weavings. Thank you. I was going to ask what the story of your current weaving is, but you told us as I was typing. So what story do you want to do next? What story will you document next?
Oh gosh, what am I going to document next? I'm a full 11 months out from being able to decide what that is, because once this is done, I don't know what I did to myself, but I offered to weave it half this size. So I get to work out all the kinks in this one and then shrink it down to 36 inches and weave it again exactly the same, or shrunken. So I don't have a plan on what the next story is. I'm gonna let the future show me what that is. Yeah.
Have a while yet. Can I just ask a question? When you weave something like you're weaving half size, does that mean you have half the number of warps, or you have a finer warp?
That is a really good question. It depends on the artist and the accessibility of your spinners. If you can find someone who can spin a thinner warp for you, that's ideal, because some of these little shapes here are just 2 or 3 warps wide, right? So if I want to make this kind of bar come down on a smaller weaving, I'm either going to only use a single warp to do that, or I'm going to have to weave on a smaller strand, like the warp strands that I'm working on. The other part about shrinking your warps, of course, if I have, you know, what is the math on this? If I have 72 inches and 5 folded strands in each one of those for this blanket, and give me the math on that, anyone? So 72 times 5 would be, well, it could be, no, what?
Like 360, something like that.
Yeah, so we've got 360 folded strands. And of course, each of those 5 makes 10 ends. So I've got 720 ends, right? The little strands, individual strands that are hanging down, right? The folded strand makes 2, so 720. So if I shrink it down to 36 inches and I had 7 folded strands, or 14 little ends in every one of those inches, what does that add up to? 14 times 36. Hey, all y'all viewers, I know you have your Siri next to you. You can be like, Siri, what's this?
Perhaps someone could give the answer in the chat.
Yeah, so it's going to be, I mean, the numbers could be quite close because of weaving on a 14 ends per inch. That would be the 7 folded pieces, like 17 of the ends in the inch. But yeah, I think that might be the route to go. But then thinking about how many stitches that means, that even though it's 36 inches, I could be weaving essentially 2/3 of the actual design. Like, I mean, as far as the actual twining that happens across. So 504, right? So we're only going from 720 ends or stitches that I'm making, right, to 504. So I'm not wrong that it's like 2/3 of the blanket, even though it's half of the inches. That's pretty freaky. Thanks for helping me figure that out. I'm not gonna have a mini panic attack. Might just stick to the same warp ends and use the, you know, like a one single warp that's gonna make that black bar come down. We'll see. Good considerations.
I just have one more question. That was an amazing talk. Thank you so much, Lily. I'm really interested in the emotional connection you feel when you're weaving. Do you feel closest to your ancestors when you are physically doing the weaving?
That would be true, yes. My direct ancestor being Clarissa Rosal, who was a renowned weaver herself. I had to take all of her art and all of her hint of her out of my house because she is so ever present. And when I'm sitting at this loom, it's when I talk to her. Like literally, like I will say it out loud. Clarissa, I'm sitting here today and I know you know what I'm doing and my kids are occupied, it's fine. Can you come and hang out with me? Because I know you know better than I know. Like just get my mind out of the way so that we can do this together. But yes, there's a great story from the backside of the loom. We say that, you know, this is, we talk about the Chilkat weavings in progress while they're being built as the veil between our physical realm and the spirit realm. And if you want to get really close to crossing over without crossing over, you want to get really close to talking to them and maybe be able to hear them, go to the back side of your weaving, and I should show it to you. It is very, very messy. It's kind of like the back of a cross stitch. I haven't put any of these ends up. So look at all of this craziness. All of those little guys want to get tucked up. And when you're feeling like you don't know what to do on the front of your weaving, you can take your tapestry needle and go to the back and needle up all those pieces. But when you're sitting back there on the back side of your weaving, that's when you're closest to that spirit realm. And when my mother passed, I was halfway through weaving a blanket for the Portland Art Museum. And I sat at the front of my loom and just cried and cried, and I couldn't pick up my strands again. I was like, how am I ever going to weave this without her? Right? We used to FaceTime. We'd have our phones, whatever zip code we were in, if we weren't in the same city, we'd have our phones sitting on our thigh, and then both of our hands would be moving, and I'd be able to watch my mom's hands moving while my hands are moving. And we'd be joking about this or lamenting about this husband or that boyfriend or whatever. And got to the work, couldn't weave. Multiple days just sitting and bawling my eyes out on the front side of the loom. So I called Ricky Tagaban and I said, how am I going to finish this blanket? What do I do about this? And he said, remember what you said when my brother passed away? He said, go to the back side of your loom and put up all the braids on the back side. So I went to the back side of my loom the next day and I sat there and started putting up braids, and I wasn't emotional. It was profound that I could put ends up and it was fine. And 3 or 4 days into it, just putting up all of these ends, I had the sensation of, and I can only describe it as a waterfall or like the releasing of a dam, but similar to like what we talk about when we die and all of our memories like run through in rapid succession. I had like every memory, good and bad, that I ever had with my mother, like significant moments just running through like a typewriter, like an ocean, like a waterfall rushing through from my back into the back of the weaving. And I sat up and like dropped my needle and I was like, wow. And it was a full exhale, realizing that she's not gone, that this is the closest that I will get to her forever without stepping across the veil. So thanks for asking that question, because it's where she is.
Thank you, Lily. We don't have any other questions, so unless anyone is going to quickly type something into the question box, it looks like we may have come to the end of our session today. So I'd like to thank you once again for sharing with us. It's been really fantastic. We've all really enjoyed it, I know. As the session ends, I'd like to remind everyone to please fill in the brief questionnaire that will come up on your screen, because it will be useful to Lily as well as to us. So thanks very much, everyone, and thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you all.